And you swallow. Alright, but seriously, I wanted to make this video because your girl Esther Joy has learned a thing or two from the relationships that she's been blessed with. I'm not gonna call out names, I'm not gonna go into too much story time, but where appropriate to share what I've learned from relationships, I will share what I have learned. Okay, so let's just get into it. Now, of course, not all relationships suck. For the most part, they're actually pretty good, I would say. They're pretty fun to have a companion to live life with, experience life. It's great. It's awesome. It's definitely something that I totally admire when people are actually able to make a relationship work or just really have that chemistry. It's awesome. Now, I wanted to share what I've learned, and it's for as long as I can remember. When me and my friends started to date, I started to ask them after a relationship would end, what did you learn? What was the biggest lesson you learned from this relationship? And this is something still I ask people if they bring up that they recently broke up, or if it's not even a romantic relationship. Maybe it's a relationship with a coworker. Maybe it's a relationship with a boss. Maybe it's a relationship with a family member. Asking, what have you learned from this relationship has, I personally think, helped amplify the reflection and understanding of the connection and why. First off, let's zoom out for a moment. Let's look at the bigger picture. You agreed to everything beforehand, okay? What would be beneficial for your soul to experience here? You agreed to it. Now you're here to experience it. You're going to experience it. Super cool, awesome sauce. Now, not everybody really of course, is given, a golden spoon in their mouth, or however the saying goes. It's the same with relationships. Sometimes you get really rocky relationships with your family members, with maybe friends, and especially romantic relationships when you touch into that. So I wanted to take a moment to share, what I have learned so far, through the relationships I have experienced. And this is, of course, I'm not here to jab at them. I thank them for allowing me these very priceless, valuable lessons I wouldn't have been able to learn otherwise. So, okay, let's get into it, okay? Okay, what did I learn with my relationship? Well, first I learned that you don't try to compromise for no reason. Like, have your boundaries set. Now, you should have room for compromising, but you should also have like a line where it's like, this is it. This is the room I have for compromising, but this is you could say, the bare minimum. I think that this is just for your own self-respect, having a bare minimum, a boundaries of what you will and will not tolerate is important. And then you can have the gray area that is the land of compromise. But if you don't, you will easily find yourself kind of just being like, yeah, it's not that bad. Yeah. And then next thing you know, you're just like, how did that happen? Why did I let that happen? Because obviously it just wasn't really anything I feel like I should have let happen. And so set boundaries and have a bare minimum and have space for compromise, but also, respect yourself and others enough to establish those boundaries and communicate them. So it's like mutual respect. It's easier. There's not as much walking on a minefield, not sure when you're going to walk over the boundaries for yourself or them. Okay. All right. So, yeah. That's been a good one. That's been a big one. Okay, communication. Now, communicating your feelings, not being afraid to say how you feel, and not blaming the other person for how you feel. I very much dislike when people are like, ooh, you made me feel happy, or you made me feel bad. I don't like that. I didn't make you feel anything. You feel that way because you interpreted what I did in a certain way and it made you feel that way, but I didn't do it. That's on you. Okay? Whether it's a good or bad emotion, I can take responsibility for my emotions. I cannot take responsibility for your emotions, how you may react, how you may be. I can take consideration of your emotions, but really, like, I can't predict how you're going to feel with what I do. So, with that being said, being able to communicate emotions. Now, what do I mean by this? I used to, like, not really tell my partners when I felt a certain type of way. You know, for whatever reason, I just didn't. I knew that, like, I probably should address this. I probably should let them know I feel the type of way. But for whatever reason, I just wasn't sure how to bring it up in a way that it wouldn't, you know, it was just kind of, oh, it made me feel that way, you know, or I feel that way because of this. You know, it was something that it would be so tiny, it would feel like maybe, you know, I'd undermine my own emotions. And then what would happen is that everything, I would start being really petty. Because this little emotion, this underlying emotion, just this emotion that I undermined and I didn't want to share, guess what? It just grew and grew. It wasn't something that went away because I never really addressed it. I just kind of held on to it and said, maybe when the time comes for me to address it. And usually that's like a blow-up session, an argument, because you didn't address those emotions, and then you start acting petty, you start doing petty things, and then they're not sure why you're acting that way because you didn't communicate your emotions. And then it's just, you know, you start crying because the toilet roll is almost finished, or something kind of seems irrelevant, but it goes back to you didn't communicate and release the emotions when you should have, and now you're releasing them maybe months later, and it's coming out in like unintended ways because you weren't clear with communicating how you felt. Okay. Yeah, I'd be learning that lesson. It's important to just say it how it is, when it is, the way it is. Okay. Now moving on. I think the last thing that I have learned from just relationships that has been a big one for me is not being afraid of people not liking me. That is also kind of ties with communicating your emotions, you know, like yes men that just like say yes to their superior all the time so that they're liked. Oh, do this. Yes. Oh, did you like that? Yes. Yes. Don't even think about it. Just say yes. Just agree. And what I would say, that's not really being your authentic self. You're coming from this place of you want to be liked. You're coming from this place of, I'm afraid of being rejected, so let me agree with everything. Now, don't be afraid to be disliked. Is all I'm gonna say. Especially if you're in your relationship, you need to test the bounds. I'm not saying do things intentionally so that your partner hates you or dislikes you or finds it difficult to be with you. I'm saying sometimes you don't have to agree with everything. Sometimes it's good to speak your mind and not be afraid of if the other person's gonna like you because you said that thing. It's again going back to being your authentic self, not being afraid to say, this is how I feel, this is, you know, what's going on. No, I don't agree with you on that. Okay? I'm not a very confrontational person. I don't like confrontation. If somebody confronts me, I'll be like, okay, well, you confronted me, so this is so-and-so. But I'm not usually going to go out of my way to confront someone unless it's probably not my... Anyways, back on the topic. Being able to set these boundaries, say no, and not really, this sounds weird, but care if the other person likes you. You don't need their validation to like yourself. And that sounds pretty selfish and narcissistic, to be honest. But let me finish this thought. Even as a child, we're conditioned to, you know, need this validation, need this form of praise so that we feel wanted. And that's good and all, especially as a child, seeing as we pretty much at one time in our lives relied heavily for everything in our lives to be alive. And these people, it's good if they like us, and that means better survival chances. But when you get older and start, like, I guess you could say, fending for yourself in the world, you don't have to be yes man. And it's very important for you to set boundaries so that you don't have all of this resentment building up within you that can cause just disharmonious manifestation. But you address it openly and honestly. I know that I find it kind of difficult to say, actually, no, I don't agree with what you said. I'm not, and just being honest with how I feel. Sometimes, good viber, I'll be honest. I just want to be like, yeah, but no, you can't always go with the flow all the time when the flow isn't where you want to go. I mean, trust in God and God will show the way, but sometimes you got to row. Sometimes you got to grow in the other direction because that's not where you want to go. And that's okay. So what have I learned in relationships to kind of sum up? Pretty much just be your authentic self. Tell people how you feel. Set boundaries so that you respect yourself and you respect others, and be able to communicate these boundaries effectively without fear of letting the other person down or feeling like you're going to disappoint them. You can't control that person's emotions. You can't control how they're going to take a situation, and it's not your job to control them. It's not your job to, mold their life. It's their life, and it's your life. It's your job to find a partner that's compatible with your life, and that's honestly all that it is. You're finding what is going to help highlight the aspects of your life and your authentic self, your authentic being, that will help you in the way in which you want to grow. So if you're trauma bonding, which I know what that looks like, the worst aspects of yourself are going to come out. The toxic traits are going to come out from both sides because you're going to trigger each other. You're not going to be authentic with each other. You're going to probably have petty arguments, or arguments that just blow up out of the blue that seem super dramatic. And then all of a sudden you still feel like you haven't been able to communicate who you are. You're not accepted for who you are. You have to do something extra to be accepted or loved. And that's just honestly not, that's what I've learned, that it's not actually the case. It's okay in a relationship to express your authentic self, to be afraid of, you could say, rejection, but still authentically communicating with that fear in mind, clearing it so that you can really just be fully there without the fear, just face to face with that person, and be, the vulnerable soul that you are in the shell of the human body that you inhabit. So yeah, I hope that this video will help you in some way as you continue to form relationships, as we all do, and just be more of your own authentic self, to be less afraid of sharing, to those that you're in a relationship with, regardless of the nature, platonic or not, the authenticity of you, the beauty that you hold, and that you can amplify that for other people. May it be that when you share your mind and your emotions, that it actually in some way, even, and I'll give you now a story, in some way it uplifts it. Now, my friend and I, we were like planning on going skating, and I knew that she hadn't skated before, and I hadn't skated in a while, and, it was just kind of a chill day. I looked up, I found the skate place, and I asked my brother if he wanted to come, and my baby brother was like, yeah, I'll go. So, cool. I was pretty excited. My friend was like, no offense, proceeds to say something a little bit offensive that I found offensive. I love my family. They're pretty close to me, and I thought that we were all pretty cool. And she's just like, why you have to bring another person, and, this, and this, and I totally understand where she was coming from, but that didn't really excuse how she brought up, and the attitude and the kind of tone that she was bringing that I found offensive. So I said, and this was something that I think in a relationship, it was a friendship, and I love the girl. I love her so much. She's like one of my best friends. But I said, that was offensive. actually that was kind of offensive, but I understand where you're coming from. And, you know, thank you for letting me know, and I'll try to take that into consideration more. And just saying that, I think, was something that, honestly, learning this lesson of setting boundaries, being respectful, letting people know how you feel, not just saying, yes, okay, I get you, you know, just saying understandable or okay, yeah, no, actually letting them know, yeah, that was actually kind of offensive. I don't really appreciate how you said it, but I understand where you're coming from, and I'll do better in the future. Having that conversation, I freaked out. I threw my phone because I had never really, I don't know, set boundaries with my friend like that, or shared something that was disagreeing of what they said, especially when they were saying something like that. Anyways, long story short, they also saw like where their tone of voice was coming a little bit off, and they apologized, and they said, I really didn't mean for it to come off that way in any way. Thank you for understanding where I'm coming from. And awesome, resolved. You know, I could have held on to that and just be petty, like, why they gotta get at me? They don't like my family? Like, what's going on here? You know, and get really, really petty. And then I see them and I start acting like all types of way. And that's just, you know, a small reflection of something that happens day to day for everyone. These interactions that we have with people in that split second where we think, what should I say, you know, to this person, what they're saying back. Be honest. Be true to how you actually feel. Be respectful. Set boundaries that are respecting you and the other person, and be clear. You know, don't really care so much about pleasing the other person as much as being authentically who you are and true. So that's really all I have. Again, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you found this useful, and thank you for sticking to the end. You can press a thumbs up if you like this video. If you'd like more, let me know. What have you learned within the relationships you've dwelled in and experienced? I would love to know. And I'll see you in the next video. God bless. Namaste.